Hello, welcome once again to Urban Paranormal. My name is Keith and today is another spooky story. Today's story is about vampires. And vampires again in Liverpool, this time in the area of Anfield. This is a story from the dark days of World War II. And although the incident cannot be explained, it is described within the tale, so you'll understand. I can, to a certain extent, speculate and theorise on the nature of the entity featured in the narrative. In the early hours of Friday, the 31st of October, Halloween, 1941, a 55-year-old private in the Home Guard named Ken was patrolling the area around Stanley Park when he saw a figure on a bicycle coming towards him down Priory Road. It was an old friend named Jagger, a renowned tough nut, the same age as Ken. He had fought in the last lot, World War I, and had served in India, France with the Seaforth Highlanders, and he has sustained some terrible injuries in the previous war, and despite having part of his foot amputated, he was an able rider and a very valuable member of the recently formed Home Guard Cycling Patrol. Ken had so much respect for Jagger, he forced him to have his last cigarette, and he asked him what he was doing in the North End, for Jagger was based at Wavertree Town Hall, which is now serving as the headquarters of the Home Guard. In that area, some clowns said they saw gliders flying low over Stanley Park, so they sent me up to have a look just in case. Jaggers replied with a lopsided smirk. One of my many duties of the Home Guard was to patrol wide open spaces such as Stanley Park, where German paratroopers or enemy gliders could possibly land. Just the other day, there had been a panic after several people swore that the German warship arrived over the Mersey. People were so afraid of the invasion, they were starting to hallucinate Nazi invaders everywhere. Well, Jegs, there must be some communication problems down in Wavertree, said Ken, because I was sent round from my HQ for the same reason, and all I've seen so far is a scruffy looking old owl in the Anfield cemetery. Go on, get home lad, get some sleep. I think I will, Kenny, Jagger replied as he cycled off with his cigarette still in his mouth. He shouted, "We must have a few jars in the Jolly Miller one night," to which Ken replied, "The Jolly Miller got bombed. It'll have to be in the coffee house up your way." "Sounds like a plan to me," shouted Jaggers, wheeling off up the moonlit road. "Ta-ra, Ken." Ken glanced up at the waning moon in its last quarter hanging in a starry sky, and then his gaze fell down to the cocky watchman sat in front of the incandescent brazier overseeing the roadworks at Walton Lane end of Priory Road. Ken recognised the old watchman as 70-year-old Harold McIntosh, a hod carrier on every building site Ken had worked on in his younger days. The two men got chatting, and Ken shared some of his Irish stew that had been bubbling on the can of the brazier, and McIntosh also gave him a few rounds of barley bread to toast. Ken mentioned the so-called Nazi gliders that had been reported over Stanley Park, and old McIntosh reacted strangely. He gave a knowing nod and said, "It's no glider, Ken, but there's something flying round here at night because I've seen it with my own eyes, mate." "You're pulling my leg," said Ken, smiling as he took a sidelong look at the watchman. "As true as God's in heaven, Ken," McIntosh solemnly insisted with a nod of his head. He opened a tobacco tin and took out a single-rolled cigarette and carefully broke it in two. He offered one half to a grateful Ken and said, "Whatever it is, it comes from over there," and he nodded towards Anfield Cemetery. "It'll be that owl, Mac," said Ken with a nervous laugh, but McIntosh was deadly serious when he came back with, "Then it must be an owl with a 6-foot wingspan. And it's got a bit of a white to it, like a face, honestly." "What was that?" Ken asked, and it thinned his eyes. "Listen, I'm going to bit Mutton Jeff," said McIntosh, What is it? Ken angled his tin helmeted head. Just heard 3 bangs like gunshots or a car backfiring. And now I can hear what sounds like a woman laughing far off somewhere. Listen. Oh yeah, I can hear her. Macintosh gave a puzzled look and whispered, sounds more like crying than laughing though. No, she's laughing. Whoever it is, and it's coming from the other side of the park on Anfield Road, was Ken's estimation, and it's getting nearer. It's been that long since we heard anyone laughing, it just seems strange, said Macintosh, and he pulled on the rolly. Wonder what the bangs were, pondered the watchman. Sounds don't half play some funny tricks at night. The mad woman's definitely getting nearer. Listen to her, said Ken, his eyes travelling up to the moon as he wondered what the source of the laughter was. Somehow he knew it was not from a human, but he didn't voice his strange thoughts. Screeching laughter was suddenly heard above the treetops of Stanley Park, and a dark, fluttering shape passed overhead, passing in front of the waning half-moon. It swooped down towards the cemetery, then curved and headed straight towards the 2 men. As Ken quickly pointed the barrel of his Lee Enfield rifle at the thing attacking him and Macintosh, he saw it had the face of a smiling woman with reflective eyes like a cat. The long, jet black hair of the flying entity seemed to ride like venomous snakes in the head of Medusa, and the black cloak trailing behind it billowed in the descent. Ken blasted the face with the first round. The rifle's .303 was designed to be a brutal to flesh, blood, and what seemed to be pale skull fragments flew out of the back of the thing's head. The second shot hit the body of the thing, and it emitted an ear-piercing scream and smashed into the park railings. Ken fired 2 more rounds into the strange creature as it leaned against the green railings, but it shielded its bloody face with the cape, and then it ran off up Priory Road and took off into the night sky. Did you see its teeth? Macintosh repeatedly asked the stunned Ken, who finally said, no. She had huge teeth, all pointed, said Macintosh. Didn't you see them? No, snapped Ken. I was too busy trying to shoot the bloody thing. Macintosh deserted his duty and left the roadworks, never to return, and when Ken got back to his HQ, he had to account for the 4 missing rounds. He told his captain what happened and expected to receive a severe reprimand for recounting what sounded like such an unbelievable story. But the captain said another Home Guard soldier from the Wavertree Division had also fired upon something ghastly that had been seen over Anfield Cemetery, and Ken realised the captain was referring to his friend Jagger. When Ken caught up with Jagger a few weeks in the coffee house pub, the first thing he asked him about was the creature of the night that he'd shot at. Jaggers was a bit reluctant to talk about the thing at first, but after a pint or 2 he went with Ken to a quiet corner of the pub and said, about 10 minutes after I left you that night, I turned me bike down Arkell's Lane and I thought I saw something fly overhead. I stopped and looked up and saw nothing, but something in the sky had cast a shadow in the moonlight road. Anyway, I went on my way and then I saw it again about 300 yards away up Anfield Road. It looked like a giant blackbird or a bat, and it flew towards me, then turned and went back up the road at rooftop level. I'm certain it brushed against the chimney pot of a corner house on Tanaka Road. I followed it, cycling as fast as I could, and it swooped on me by Blessington Road, and I realised what it was. What? Asked an intrigued Ken. What was it? I'll tell you in a minute, said Jaggers. So I took my gun out of its holster and fired at it 3 times, and this was from about 15 feet away. 3 times I hit the thing in the chest, and it twisted in midair and it took off again. It was that close. I could feel the gush of air from it as it went by. Well, wait a moment. I heard you fire those shots, said Ken with a slight grin, recalling how he told the cocky watchman Macintosh he had heard what sounded like gunshots or a car backfiring. The thing flew off, and it was laughing its head off, said Jeggers, gripping the tankard of ale. Anyway, you won't believe this, but I had seen the same thing when I was out in India. They call them Vitalas. They're vampires, Ken. They hang around cemeteries, usually living in catacombs, and if they are really young, they hollow out corpses and live in their shell, because when they are young, they look horrific, so they use the skin and face of that dead person as a disguise. They hang upside down in trees, and when they bite you, they can suck all the blood out of you. And what's that? About your 8 pints? And then grossed out, Ken nodded with an awful grimace on his face. Jeggers snapped his fingers. Like that. Every drop gets sucked out of you in seconds. I saw one of them when I was in Delhi just after the last lot. I thought it was a woman hanging by her feet from a banyan tree, and the locals ran off when they saw her. She was jet black, and her face was sort of a bluish white. She had large red eyes. Before I could even think of grabbing my pistol, she fell off the tree, and before she hit the ground, she flew off. She seemed to have wings. So you're telling me you saw a vampire that night? Ken asked as he sipped his beer. And if the thing we saw was one of those things in India, what's it doing over here in Liverpool? I haven't got a clue, Ken. Maybe they bleeding migrate like birds. Anyway, pal, don't you go round telling anyone about this, Ken. They'll think we're drinking on duty, said Jeggers, and after a thoughtful pause he added, the funny thing was that when I told the captain, I thought I'd get a right bollocking from him for firing off 4 rounds. But I got the impression he had either seen that thing himself, or something like it, or he'd heard the others report. It was really odd the way he just let it go. Don't worry, Jegs, I won't breathe a word, said Ken, and then he knocked back what was left in his tankard and said, Shakespeare was right, wasn't he? There are more things in heaven and earth than we have dreamt about. Just what that fang thing was, which swooped down on Ken and his friend that Halloween night, is unknown. But for decades a rumour has persisted that a Russian vampiress was entombed in the catacombs under Anfield Cemetery. Most people are not aware that there are 4 blocks of catacombs 25 feet beneath the cemetery, moulded in the ones like that are in Rome. And when a Russian nobleman was visiting Liverpool over 100 years ago, his wife died and he put her in a specially constructed coffin which was deposited in the Anfield catacombs. The nobleman said he had to return to Russia immediately on a diplomatic mission, but that he would come back and build a church dedicated to the memory of his wife in Anfield Cemetery. That nobleman was never heard from again, and his wife's hermetically sealed coffin was left on a stone shelf in the catacombs. And there are 20 coffins in the catacombs to this very day, and the vampiric rumours surrounding the Russian nobleman's deceased spouse have long died down. Was the vampiric being which attacked the 2 home guardsmen a Russian vampiress, or was it, as Jeggers mooted, an Indian species of vampire known as the Vitala? We may know more one day. Now, I have covered this Russian princess, noblewoman before. There's something definitely strange with that story, and I've been around Anfield Cemetery a few times checking out the places, the catacombs and stuff, and it's very, very strange. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed today's story. Take care and see you all in the next video. Peace.